You have the ring. And I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. Now let's see how well you handle it.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. I guess a lot of you are viewers. I don't really consider most of you friends anymore. People asked me to watch The Rise of Skywalker so I could talk about it with my good friend Aaron Sparrow after our last video about Star Wars. This has been a harrowing day. It's not been a pleasant experience. And here with me to talk about The Rise of Skywalker is Aaron Sparrow himself. How you doing, Aaron?
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Listen, the good thing is, Aaron, this ain't as bad as the Last Jedi.
In some ways, I think it's worse because it had to follow Last Jedi.
Well, yeah, I mean, it kind of holds it down, and that certainly plays into some of the things. And there are a lot of faults and things to talk about in here. But I did come away with a few things that I liked about it. First off, for the most part, it looks good, as you would expect a J.J. Abrams directed film to look. It sounds pretty good. I don't like when they're flying through hyperspace. I think they got that all wrong. But they're, other than that, I think the look and sound of the movie are top flight.
Yeah, the hyperspace skipping was a stupid idea. It's another thing that completely derails the logic of the Star Wars universe. I mean, they already did it in The Last Jedi with the hyperspace kamikaze move. That pretty much broke the logic of the universe.
We're talking about the stuff we liked here.
Are we? Because I'm going to be real short on that.
Light speed skipping is in the dislike column. We'll get there in a second. So there's been up to this point one character in the entire sequel trilogy that I said, you know what? My kids can own a BB-8 shirt. Now there's two characters. My biggest like from the movie is Babu Frick.
Oh yeah, Babu Frick was fun. He felt like Star Wars.
Yeah, that character was awesome. The worst thing about it is at the end with the last big fight scene, he wasn't flying his own ship, kicking ass.
Yeah, that should have definitely happened. I would have loved that. They even made a little toy for Yoda in the Clone Wars, his own little Jedi starfighter, and it is smaller than the other Jedi starfighters. It's Babu Frick should have had something like that. Would have been great.
Love the character. I do feel like they dropped the ball where he shows up in the ship with Poe's old lover interest. I don't remember her name already, but
Zori.
There you go, Zori Bliss. Why would you hire Carrie Russell and then put a mask on her the whole time? She's beautiful.
Yeah, well, because I don't know that she even showed up. I think they just green screened a body double and then she just. They filmed it from home, and then they just CGI'd her eyes into the mask. I swear,
maybe
it's just like one scene where you even see her eyes.
There's two more things that I liked about this movie before we get into the dislike, because there's a lot of stuff to talk about and kind of tear apart The Rise of Skywalker. I liked that the Rose Tico Finn romance was put on the back burner, and they essentially act like it never existed.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Well, I mean, it never existed in Finn's mind. Even in The Last Jedi, it didn't exist. She seems to just kiss him out of nowhere. It's like, oh, I didn't. What?
Very reminiscent of a moment in this movie when next thing you know, Kylo and Rey are kissing. You're like, they've got the sexual chemistry of a Luke and Leia here. It's gross. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, and also sort of related.
Yeah, so I was glad they put the romance on the back burner. The last thing that I'll say about this that was done good, we know that Carrie Fisher passed away in between the filming of the second and the third movie. They did some CGI work. I understand that they took some old footage and they were able to put her in the movie when she's like her normal age. When she passed away, I think the CGI looks fantastic. In the flashback scene, not so much, but for the most part, I think they did Leia justice, and she looks nice.
She looks nice. The scenes are totally cut and paste, and you can really feel that it's just generic dialogue that she had, and that they're wrapping the other dialogue around it, and it feels very awkward and stilted. Again, it's just one of those things that they had to do because of the failings of The Last Jedi. Obviously, they should have recut that movie so that Leia passed away in that movie, and done some reshoots so that Luke was still alive in this one. But of course, Rian Johnson was going to go in the terrible direction that Rian Johnson wanted to go in, and this is what we're left with.
All right, so we talked about the stuff I liked. Babu Frick was a big hit for me.
I'll say something else. I'll say something positive about the movie, and about this trilogy in general, and that is Adam Driver. Adam Driver is trying so hard when clearly everyone else has given up. Like, he's still giving it his all. He's the best part of this movie, even though the movie does not serve him at all. But he's really trying, and he really he really brought it, to a project that didn't deserve it.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll say that Babu Frick brought the heat the most. Adam Driver is a close second.
Whoever was puppeting Babu Frick. Well, what if you found out that it was Adam Driver who was performing as Babu Frick as well? He was doing double duty.
Would be surprising the least. Absolutely. I would be like, it makes sense. For what everything I saw.
The guy on set that cared anymore.
So this is the end of a trilogy, and we'll get into some of the dislikes and disappointments that come with the Rise of Skywalker. They brought back the original trilogy heroes. Obviously, we've got, Billy D. Williams arrives in this one, Lando. We never got to see Luke, Han, and Leia together again. What a missed opportunity to have them on the big screen again one last time.
That's why The Force Awakens was such a success, was because people thought that's what they were going to get. That was kind of the promise of the trailer. And so people went out in droves to see it because they were excited to see their heroes back on the screen, even though they were much older. It was kind of like, oh, what happened to those characters? And people were interested. And this trilogy, like in so many ways, did not deliver on that, as well as so many other things.
Yeah, so that is probably the biggest missed opportunity in all of this, and quite a disappointment. And it can never be done now.
Nope.
And,
missed that window.
Absolutely, that's too bad. There's another thing that I'm noticing here. I don't know if you notice this. What's with the Jedi using the Force to commit suicide? It happens twice in this trilogy. I find it exceptionally strange. And you could say, technically, maybe it happens 3 times with what Kylo Ren did.
Yeah, the Force makes no sense anymore in these films. That there used to be an internal logic to the way that things worked when Lucas had it set up. But, the Force is essentially just magic now. And it can be used to get you out of any situation. There's a lot of Force powers introduced in this that we haven't seen before, like the Force teleport that just becomes a matter of plot convenience. It doesn't really serve any purpose beyond that. It does give us a cool moment with Kylo Ren getting a lightsaber, but the entire setup around that is ridiculous. It's like, oh, here are the Knights of Ren, and they're beating him with shovels or whatever.
Yeah,
and we're supposed to care. Right. And the worst part is when the Knights of Ren come in, they march onto the starship, and J.J. Abrams, in order to get you because they don't have time to develop anything or to show you that these guys might be able to do some cool stuff. We don't have time for that because we've got to go on a million fetch quests and in just this incredibly rapid pace that almost gives you a seizure. So we don't have time to develop anybody. So, hey, the Knights of Ren walk onto the ship, and you have to have a stormtrooper go, oh, it's the Knights of Ren, so we know who they are. And then another stormtrooper go, cool, so that we know that they're supposed to be cool. Despite
there's a bit of that.
Contrary.
There's another moment similar to what you're talking about there that really stood out for me, and I absolutely hated it. I wanted to puke in my mouth. It's when Maz Kanata gives Chewie that medal.
Oh!
That was some of the worst fan service I've ever seen in my life.
Because it's only fan service. There's no internal logic. There's no logic within the movie or within the story as to why that would happen. And this is something that J.J. Abrams does all the time. If you go back to like Star Trek Into Darkness, there's the moment where Benedict Cumberbatch says, "My name is Khan." And it's delivered with all this drama. But Kirk, Spock, all these characters, they've never encountered him before. So that means nothing to them. There's no point for him to give it that big dramatic read. It's for us, the audience, because we're supposed to go, oh, it's Khan. I know who Khan is.
I knew it.
But again, it's one of the main flaws in the way that J.J. Abrams approaches things, which is he's approaching things from not from the standpoint of story, but from the standpoint of what would be cool, for the audience. The problem is, once the audience thinks about it, it's not cool anymore. It's stupid.
I agree. there's another thing that just stood out for me like a sore thumb. It kind of goes throughout this entire movie. I don't remember this being the case in the first two films. Why are Poe and Finn like an angry married couple? Why are they always arguing now? All they do is bicker.
They had a good Well, it's so funny because it's like they try to establish relationships between characters that haven't spent a lot of time together. Poe and Finn spent a little bit of time together in the first movie, almost none in the second movie. So, we have nothing there. And Rey and Poe didn't even meet until the end of the second movie. And that was just because Colin Trevorrow told Rian Johnson, I need these characters to meet so that I have something to work with in the third. And then, of course, he was off the project for, differences with Kathleen Kennedy, which seems to befall almost every director that comes onto a Star Wars project under her leadership. Again, it's like one of those things that it drives you nuts. It makes no sense. This movie.
I got a couple other things that just really stand out. That I need to hit. Then I'll start putting them in categories. Like I've got 3 categories of things. We can say, this sucks, and this sucks, and it's all kind of for the same reason. This next thing, you've already mentioned it. Light speed skipping is worse than the Holdo maneuver. It makes no sense within the established lore of Star Wars that you'd start skipping through light speed without making calculations. You would die instantly. And I absolutely hated the idea. And I hated the idea that everyone was like, you can't light speed skip at that ship. It's not ready for it. It's like, you can't light speed skip, period. Because it's a fool's errand and you would die immediately.
Well, you might not die immediately, but the way that they did it didn't make any sense. It's like, okay, so you're light speed skipping, and every jump that you come out of, you're like in a new color immediately involved in the middle of all kinds of chaos.
Yes.
It's like, how big is
like there's mountains.
Yeah.
You would have flown into the mountain.
Yeah. And even or you would have just been skipping through empty space, because the galaxy is huge.
Yeah.
Not every time, if you're just randomly jumping in and out of hyperspeed, you're not going to be in a populated, crowded area every time that you come out.
It's still like playing Russian roulette. You're going to lose eventually.
Well, especially because you have the whole setup in the original trilogy. This is the thing with these sequels, is they just ignore every piece of world building that is done in the original trilogy.
The Han?
You'll jump right through a star, or you bounce too close to a supernova, and that'll be it.
When Han Solo decided to do his maneuver in the first one with J.J. Abrams, where they blasted inside the shields by using hyperspace. Whatever. One time, I'll give you one time, but every time they've attempted to do anything with it since then, it's just been all terrible, and it culminates with light speed skipping, one of the worst ideas ever introduced in Star Wars.
It's what happens when you're building your movie around set pieces and action sequences, as opposed to bringing those things out of the story that you're telling. It's backwards writing, and everything about this is backwards writing. There's a point in the movie where it's like, hey, we need the characters to get onto an Imperial starship. How do we do that? And you feel like they got to that point of the script, like, how do we get the characters there? And then it's just like, hey, just let's just go back and write a scene where Zori Bliss has a magic coin from the hat of a captain or an admiral, and they can just get on we'll do the magic coin thing. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Probably
this last big thing that really stands out to me, it wasn't introduced in this movie. I believe it's introduced in Rogue One, where you have the idea of Star Destroyers in atmosphere. This is the most singularly dumb idea ever. It defies any laws of physics, even if you're in a fantasy world. You would build a Star Destroyer in space, and that's where you would pilot it. It would not be able to come in atmosphere. When it's sitting there hovering, gravity is affecting the Star Destroyer. It's going to come down to Earth or whatever planetoid you're on, whether it be a moon, a planet, maybe a comet or whatever, unless you have thrusters keeping it up. There are no thrusters on the bottom of Star Destroyers. You could not sit in atmosphere with them. They're too big. I hate it. There was 1,000 of them.
Then you put out a technical manual and you just say, hey, here's these bolts.
Anti-gravity device?
Those are the anti-grav generators right there. Just like in the technical manual, you say, hey, how are those bombs dropping in space? Oh, well, they're magnetic bombs.
Yeah.
The smart bombs that
All the magnets in the world ain't gonna fix
magnets.
that
Wes, how do they even work?
one. They're space magnets, apparently.
You put
So
space
that was stupid. That you had 1,000 Star Destroyers sitting in the atmosphere of a planet that were apparently under ice.
Again, one of the flaws of J.J. Abrams is that he is a man with no ideas. So both of his Star Wars movies end with big super weapon, because that's how, the original Star Wars ended, and how Return of the Jedi ended was with the Death Star. So in the first one, he had to just build a bigger Death Star, because that's what he does. He just takes the thing and makes it bigger, and that's supposed to be better and more impressive. So in this, it was like, well, we can't do a big
We got 1,000 Death
space
Stars
station again. But what if there's a Death Star laser on every Star Destroyer? Well, the Star Destroyer had to be, the Death Star had to be that big because of all the power. The implication was all of the power it took to generate that blast. And now you've got one on every single ship. And them being under the ice, like what sort of logic? There's all these questions that aren't answered. They're all fully crude.
Yeah. You just kept like 100,000 people under ice for 25 years and no one escaped or got mad.
Yeah. Or did you? And he says like he's been using his Sith powers to conjure this fleet. So what does that mean? He's been building them with the Force. How do you even?
Why didn't the Jedi do that? Why did they have to contract an army out to the clone people on Camino and all that stuff? They could have just built it their own.
There's no logic to the Force anymore under Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars.
All right, so
she doesn't understand it. The story group doesn't understand it, and it doesn't matter because it's just all about spectacle.
It's what Kelly Sudaconic said: magic. So those are some of the big things. These are some more overarching plot issues. Now the very first one, I call it the light speed skipping story. He's just skipping light speed through this story, and you're like, boom, 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 boom. Why are we here? Why are we here? You're just going in 100 different directions. Nothing made sense. There's no coherent through point as far as the narrative. Where did Palpatine come from? Why is the first mention we've ever seen of him in the crawl, and then it's just firmly established that he's there in the first 5 minutes of the movie? You should be building to something like this. It makes no sense whatsoever. And also, JJ...
No, Wes, they should not build to that. You should be playing Fortnite.
Barely.
You got the answer.
And then JJ is essentially going back and undoing all of Ryan's work as he's going along, and that's why nothing makes any sense. So when Luke throws the lightsaber away, he needs to fix that. When Luke was a curmudgeon that hated life and he escaped the world, he's got to go undo that. Just fix Luke's outlook on life. Ray's parentage, which was thrown away by Rian Johnson, he's got to go fix that. The Holdo maneuver, he's got to call it 1 in a million. Is that an homage to Han Solo saying that's 1 in a million, kid? Or is it him explaining why you can never do a Holdo maneuver again? But he's trying to go fix all these enormous gaping holes that Rian Johnson put in his story so he could finish it somewhat with what he had started with. And it makes for a very incoherent, rushed movie. It sucks.
It shows you the problem. This is the problem with mystery box writing. This is the problem with not having a plan. This is a problem with setting up a bunch of things that you don't know how to pay off, and then on top of that, handing it off to somebody who is incompetent and who just decides, well, I'm not going to pay any of those things off. I'm just going to say they were all bullshit. And then
went and took a dump in every one of J.J. Abrams' mystery boxes.
Yeah, and then J.J.
You like that one?
Boxes up and explained why there's this giant pile of shit in each box. And, and then feed it to you and tell you why you should be satisfied with it.
There's ways.
I have another question. Okay, wait. I have another question related to the light speed skipping. They needed to do the light speed skipping to get away from the First Order ships that had tracked them down while they were getting this download of information
from a spy,
from this alien guy.
Here's another problem I have. I thought TIE fighters couldn't go into hyperspace like X-wings. And that was like their weakness.
Yeah, but they can now, just like stormtroopers can fly now. Even though stormtroopers have been flying in the expanded universe stories. Well,
what's the weakness of a TIE fighter? They should just wipe out the entire X-wing squadron now because they're more maneuverable, they're faster, and they have just the same amount of range.
They're bigger and better, just like everything. Everything is bigger and better now, but yet somehow worse. But okay, so there's that big download of information, right? that they almost die because they're waiting for that download to finish.
Yes.
And then, that's why they have to do the light speed skipping, because they're being pursued. That download of information amounted to Palpatine is back.
It's a text message.
Like downloading the Death Star plans. It's not like even getting schematics. It's just a message that he broadcast out. You could have written that on a piece of paper and just handed it to them when they got there. You could have just told them what was said over communications. It's so
you should have said that this is the drop spot. There's going to be a cup underneath that trash can, and it's going to have a message for you.
Yeah, and or you could have just brought R2, and he could have done that in 2 seconds. Again, I don't know why these movies steered away from R2-D2. I mean, they bring C-3PO back into a major role in this one, which...
Well, you can't have R2 overshadowing BB-8.
R2 is better than BB-8 in every possible way.
I'd say BB-8's more kid-friendly.
Maybe.
As far as toys.
But kids had no problem. Well, I mean, BB-8 doesn't sell as well as R2 does. So I don't know.
That's because the toys are so expensive, parents have to make the choice.
I guess that's fair. I guess I'm gonna. But I'm gonna tell you that like I sell R2 toys way better than I sell BB-8 toys, even like as far as kids' enthusiasm comes in.
Yeah.
Because kids like the original trilogy. They like the original trilogy, and kids like the prequels. And R2's all over those. He's more interesting.
My 6-year-old has watched the original trilogy, and he loved it. That's true.
J.J. Abrams' only lasting contribution to the Star Wars legacy is that he put a droid head on a beach ball. That is it. It's the only thing that'll be remembered for, aside from being terrible.
Babu Frick, man, what are you doing?
Babu Frick is great, but the movie's so bad that like he doesn't have a chance to. He doesn't have any traction, man. That's
true. It's not his fault. He needs his own show.
No, Babu Frick. You know what? He was too precious for that world.
Yeah, he didn't deserve to be in that universe. So here's one of the biggest issues. It's what we got with The Force Awakens. Almost everything in that movie was retread from the original. The A New Hope, right?
Yes.
Almost everything in here is also retreads of the original trilogy. Poe is now a spice runner, just like Han. Luke gives Rey Leia's lightsaber, just like Obi-Wan gave Luke his father's lightsaber. Rey faces a potential evil in her future when she faces off with a Sith version of herself, just like Luke did when he was training with Yoda. Rey and Palpatine fight while her friends fight an unbeatable Star Destroyer fleet, and she has to witness it. Every Star Destroyer now has a Death Star laser. They have to use space horses to defeat the Empire, kind of like with Ewoks, because the Empire is vulnerable to non-technological defenses.
Star Destroyers don't know which way are up. They don't know which way is up without a single beacon on one ship.
It's because they are in an uncharted space.
No, it's because how is it uncharted when Palpatine has a damn wayfinder that leads to it? That he's like cast out and apparently went and hid one on the ruins of the Death Star and made a dagger for you to find it. It's everything about this movie is so stupid and contrived and ridiculous. I can't even believe that this is something that got made.
Well, in the last plot retread is the creepy kiss between Rey and Kylo, like we talked about earlier. Very reminiscent of Luke and Leia, but more gross this time because when Luke and Leia kissed, you didn't realize they were brother and sister.
Yeah. Also, I don't think there was any tongue.
Not likely. She was just trying to make Han jealous.
Yeah. Come on. There's no tongue in space.
The only relationship that Rey and Kylo, as far as chemistry could beat, would be Anakin and Padme. There's no chemistry there whatsoever, but it was creepy. It felt strange. What did you think about all the plot retreads? It's just what J.J. Abrams does. It's just nostalgia porn.
Yeah, no, he has no, like I said, he has no original ideas. He's only capable of looking at a thing and making a flashier but ultimately more hollow version of it.
Yeah, I mean, they're literally in the throne room again. It's like,
there's nothing in this movie, in the entirety of watching this film, there was nothing that I cared about. like I was so disconnected and so disinterested, and the only thing that made me laugh was Babu Frick. That was the only thing
dope.
Only thing that I cared about. There are things that like people point out like that they can't stand. Like they're like, oh man, Han shows up as like a Force ghost, but then he doesn't have the Force, so he can't be a Force ghost. So then they have to say that it was just a memory. Which
because you can't see through him. He's clearly not a Force ghost.
Yeah, and it undermines Kylo's moment because where he kind of like realizes what's been done to him and what he's become. It undoes his moment because essentially it doesn't mean anything. It's just him forgiving himself by imagining that his dad forgave him. It
was undone by J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson long before Han showed back up.
Yeah, but you don't need to explain that. You don't need to say that it was a memory. You just need to let that scene exist, and when fans question it, you just point back to the original trilogy and you say, Yoda told Luke, through the Force, things you will see, friends, relatives, long gone. And that's the explanation for what Kylo was seeing. Han doesn't have to be a Force ghost. Kylo is Force sensitive, and he is seeing someone long gone through the Force. That's all that you need. But because,
I don't have any issues with that personally.
Yeah, but because I've seen people complain about it. But because, and there is a legit complaint about it. But the complaint is not that it happened. The complaint is that JJ is so uninterested in actually understanding the way that they've laid out the Force in the previous films, the kind of lore that has been established. He's so uninterested in that he just makes up things and then has to go back and try to explain them, and he makes it worse. You actually don't need, when he doesn't need to explain it, he explains it. When he does need to explain things, he doesn't.
Yeah, I was unimpressed. You said he didn't add anything. He did add stuff. Let's talk about the new Jedi powers he added. None of them made a damn bit of sense. Rey stops the ship in mid-flight. Like, it's got boosters going, would take an enormous amount of power, and then she blows it up with lightning. And yet later on, she needs to go and swim to the Death Star remains. She literally just pulled a ship out, that had enough thrust to exit the freaking atmosphere. She can't pull that piece of the fucking Death Star over to herself?
We've seen her float several tons of rocks. We've seen her levitate. We've seen her basically fly. Yet she has to canoe over to the Death Star, basically kayak over to the Death Star. By the way, after being told by somebody who actually knows the planet and knows the way that the storms work, said that it's impossible, Rey can still do it. Even though she didn't realize
she was talking to Mary Sue Skywalker.
Yeah, she didn't realize that this character can do whatever needs to be done at any moment because she is perfect, because the Force is female and so is she.
Yeah. The next one, this is Force projected lightsaber duels. Fuck me, Aaron. I hated this more than anything. They were like handing each other stuff through the Force. And he was finding out where she was because when she knocked his mask over, it showed up where he was, even though it was in another place. Get the fuck out of here.
Well, this was the most important Force power that JJ introduced, which wasn't teleportation, which wasn't healing. It was just Force plot convenience.
It was
Nothing
awful.
in this movie happens because of any kind of logical progression of events or consequences of actions. Everything happens to get to the next scene. It's like every pitch meeting with Ryan George, where the producer asks, "Wait, why does that happen?" And the answer is because the movie needs to happen, or because I wrote it down.
Why didn't Darth Vader project himself into Luke Skywalker's cockpit when he's about to shoot and blow up the Death Star and make him shoot right? He was Force sensitive. They could have connected.
Because
it's so stupid.
None of those characters were as powerful as Kathleen Kennedy's characters.
It's the dumbest power ever introduced in Star Wars.
Well,
I can say that firmly.
I'm going to say this. It's the dumbest power introduced in the sequel trilogy, because I'm going to stand firm with the idea that the sequel trilogy is not Star Wars. It does not exist. It is not canon.
I thought you were going to throw midi-chlorians in my face, so I was like, well, that was a plot contrivance that didn't need to be explained.
First
of all, Marvel's sliding timeline. No one asked George.
Listen, I get paid a lot of money by Japanese businessmen to throw midi-chlorians in their face, so I'm not going to do it for free.
Oh. Rey now has Force healing powers. We've seen that in the EU. Kyle ends up resurrecting her, kind of using the healing powers, but then he dies.
because he wasn't as good as Rey. She can resurrect with no problem, and survive it. But he can't because.
Why did any Jedi ever
like the Force? Wes, he's not
die unless they were beheaded? They should have just healed each other up.
It's just a stakes killer. Everything in this movie is a stakes killer.
Yeah, Palpatine becomes Shang Tsung. He's starting. He's sucking souls out of people.
Your soul is mine. It's a bad movie when even an Ian McDiarmid performance can't save it.
No,
he's so good in that role, and I understand why that they had just that Rian Johnson just painted them into such a corner that they had to do something, and so I understand why they decided to bring him back, even though I don't agree with it. It was nice to see him again, but again in a role.
Was it really?
It's just you're like, hey, there's Ian McDiarmid. Look, he's the Emperor. But yeah, the story, the characterization, the writing, none of it served him, and ultimately you just felt off.
I think it makes Palpatine and his death less interesting now.
Well, it undoes all the sacrifices of the original trilogy, which again, remember, is the point. The point of these movies is Kathleen Kennedy undoing everything George Lucas did and rewriting it in her own image.
All right, here's the last thing, just as far as new Jedi powers. Jedi ghost picking shit up now. Nah.
Hey, they called down lightning in the last one. They can still really interact with the environment. It's funny too because defenders are going to point out, well, Obi-Wan said he'll become more powerful than you could possibly imagine. Okay, yeah, that's what that meant.
It's like metaphysically powerful.
Yeah, or powerful to Luke as a motivator.
He'll be with Luke forever.
Mm-hmm.
You won't ever be able to split us up again.
Yep. That's what that means. Not not that he'll be able to call down Force lightning and catch stuff and oh my god. What about Rey being all the Jedi? How about that, huh?
I don't get it.
That's how powerful Rey is that she is inhabited by all of the Jedi.
Yeah, and she gets to redub herself a Skywalker there at the end.
Unearned.
Wanted to blow chunks. Oh my god, this is. It's so bad. There's a couple of other things you want to talk about. There's two more things I didn't like. You want to talk about them, or we said enough?
Let's tear this movie apart.
Hux does not make sense as being a spy. He's essentially Hitler in the first movie, delivering like a Hitler speech, and then in this one he's a spy, and then they kill him a second later after his face turned.
Well, because he needed to be replaced with General Pride, Richard E. Grant. He needed to be replaced with Richard E. Grant because Hux could no longer
Rian Johnson had made Hux look such a pussy.
Yeah, he's
no longer a threat.
Ridiculous clown in Rian Johnson's farce that he had no gravitas as a villain anymore. So it was one of those things where it was like, JJ has to deal with him. He's a character. He has to deal with him somehow. All right, we'll just make him the spy. But you're right. It makes no sense from a story standpoint either because Hux is one of the leaders of the First Order. He was scary Space Hitler in the first one. He was obviously a true believer in what they were doing. And he committed genocide against several planets. Being the spy is not going to save you. If your faction falls and you're captured, even if you live, you're going to be captured and tried for war crimes and executed. So what is your end game? Your end game is I'm such a little boo-boo kitty about Kylo Ren being mean to me that me making him lose is worth the downfall of my entire faction that I was clearly a true believer in what they were doing. It doesn't wash. It's again, it's one of those things. It's born out of what the script needs to get it from A to B.
Rian Johnson really fucked over J.J. Abrams with this movie.
He absolutely did.
Yeah. Last thing, this is my last thing, and I didn't get to write down everything, people. I just watched the movie for the first time. If I go watch it again, I bet I would have a list 3 times longer than this.
Why would you watch it again? Why would you do that?
I'm not watching it again. If I did, I know I would find more stuff because there was stuff I left off. Finn left the First Order because the Force told him to?
Sure, why not? That might as well happen.
Isn't that the way you took it?
I mean, that's kind of like the implication. But again, that's the implication. Just like there's all kinds of implications in this movie.
Like Finn doesn't have morals to where he can say, you know what, I don't want to be a murderer working for the First Order. It was the Force made to do it. If they were going to make him Force sensitive, why isn't he wielding a lightsaber? They should have had 2 Jedis in this movie. He and Rey.
The Force is Jiminy Cricket. It was sitting on his shoulder, being his conscience. Otherwise, he would have just been a murderous stormtrooper his whole life. But thankfully, the Force manifested itself in that way.
So, in my estimation, the biggest failure of this trilogy is not getting Luke, Leia, and Han together, and preferably Lando and Chewie. Get all 5 of them together, just at least one time in the movie. Mm-hmm. Wasted opportunity. The second biggest wasted opportunity in this trilogy is Finn himself. A Force-sensitive stormtrooper that quits the Empire, the First Order, and joins the Rebellion has the potential to be the most interesting point of view character in Star Wars movie history. Maybe not the best, but best hero, but it has the chance to be the most interesting. What the hell would it be like? You know what I mean? And they turned him into an absolute joke in the second movie, and he was a neutered version of himself in the third movie.
Absolutely. And you understand why John Boyega was so pissed coming off of this, because when he signed on, it probably seemed like he was going to get to do some really cool stuff, and instead, all he got to do was be a minstrel show clown under Rian Johnson, and just the worst parody of the black character, the comic sidekick that you could possibly imagine. And then in this one, he
was sexually assaulted on the field of battle.
Yep. And then he gets to and almost killed because this psychopath just wanted a little kiss, a little smooch. She almost killed him and stopped him from sacrificing himself to save all their friends. She didn't know that Luke was about to get involved. For all she knew, that was it. That laser was going to punch through and kill the entire resistance. It was stupid storytelling, and it just causes this cascade effect of stupid things in this script. So you end up with not enough time to give Finn anything interesting to do. So all he does is chase after Rey and scream her name.
And argue with Poe. The third biggest missed opportunity, I'll say it right now, Poe Dameron should not have been in this trilogy. It should have been Babu Frick as the third hero playing the Han character, and I think he would have been legendary. What a wasted opportunity. Babu Frick is the only thing I'm going to remember besides BB-8.
It is the only thing worth remembering from this movie.
All right, Aaron, did I miss anything that were really like, this was shit too? Wes, you forgot this.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that we could sit and we could talk about how terrible they were, and it's because they constructed a script around undoing a previous script and around set pieces. And this is the problem that you get with this entire Bad Robot crew. Everybody who's kind of come out of there, your Alex Kurtzmans, your Orsi, they, with the Amazing Spider-Man movies, the Star Trek movies, everything's built around big action set pieces, and then the connective tissue is all just done on the fly. So you end up with stories that aren't satisfying, that don't make sense, that don't progress logically, character motivations that change from moment to moment, or they have none, and they just kind of bounce from thing to thing because that's what the script needs them to do. It's the worst kind of writing. And unfortunately, it has really infected Hollywood and really infected these big franchises. And they keep handing stuff to J.J. Abrams. They're about to hand him a Superman movie that's going to be garbage. And, I feel completely comfortable. I don't usually prejudge things, but I feel completely comfortable judging by the track record of the quote-unquote talents involved that this is going to be a garbage fire. But he just keeps failing upwards. He ruins franchises. These Bad Robot guys, it's like they're parasites. They get attached to a franchise, they hollow it out, and leave it a dead and withered husk, and then it's radioactive for how many years until people start to forget the stink.
Absolutely. I wouldn't mind talking about movies. Maybe we won't go 40 minutes in depth next time. So if the viewers want to see us do a good movie, I'm willing to do that. If they want us to do a bad movie, I can do that too. If you don't ever want us to talk about movies ever again, let us know that too. Otherwise, you're definitely going to hear Aaron and I talk about toys in the future. That is actually his passion, and the man knows his stuff. You're going to be seeing a toy video likely a couple of days before this one. Hopefully you guys check that one out. Aaron, thank you so much. I do want to say fuck you to the viewers that told me to watch this movie. It was awful. And I really feel like you screwed me over on this one, people.
You have to share their pain.
Barely. I'm just joking. Thank you very much. It was awful.